Hello, Neil.
See, Eric posted that he won't be making it today.
I see.
So we're in Discord. I've now learned to go look at what's in Discord to find out what's going on.
That's where I'll go to anyway. I see. Okay. Excuse me.
So,
I have a little lingering coughing still going on.
yes, it's called the conference hack.
Uh, open a window.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you feeling, Wei Jing? Drummond said you were a bit under the weather.
Yeah, I was just saying that everything's gone, but this cough is still going on for, it's been like 2 weeks now.
Well,
So you
we're all
will
getting
you hear
ramped up
me?
with our latest vaccinations now because they're saying flu season is coming earlier.
Yeah, yeah. I saw that too. We'll probably need to go get my shots. Ooh, let me see. All right. Hi, Nick. Um, Eric says he couldn't join today. Let's see. Wow, there's so many of these popping up windows. Hello, Drummond. Welcome.
Hey, Wedging, as soon as I get off mute. Yeah. All right, how you doing?
Good. You will still hear me once in a while have a few coughs, dry, but it's just lingering on.
Ah, okay, you poor guy. It's not, is it COVID? Was it COVID?
No, it's not. I tested. It's not, but I don't know. These things are morphing and changing all along. I long time ago, long before COVID, and people have interest in these viruses. I read a very long book or article about how they go about producing these flu vaccinations, and so I don't know whether they still do the same way, but that would be, like 20, 30 years ago. Um, they use X. So they have worldwide like sites collecting these things, and then they put into a lab, and the lab did, the work to maybe isolate them or something. And eventually they come up with this candidate vaccines, and they have basically a massive lab or factory of live eggs, and that's where they plant it and populate them. So
Ah, and then the eggs just reproduce the vaccine and they get
yeah,
enough
yeah,
to.
yeah. That one it was like amazing to me. And also the way they collect them. So they will need to basically contract out all these, clinics around the world in the hot spots where new vaccine tend to emerge. So new virus tend to emerge. And I think one of
Mm.
them is like near Hong Kong, where birds and humans and all kind of mixed together. Um, and that's what they do. They have to also have to make decisions a year ahead because it's so slow to produce them.
Ah, I see.
So they collect some data, and there's a little bit of theory behind it, and then they make a guess.
You just have to guess.
Yeah, you
Ah,
just have to predict, I guess, like a year ahead at the time. I don't know how much improved now, but because you needed a year of time to make them,
I see. So
and
basically,
it's hard to be very accurate.
we should be looking around for where they're making lots of eggs near us, and that's going to be a safe place.
No, that's the factory.
I
Neither
know, I
safer
know, but
or less.
yeah. Well, I guess I just eat lots of eggs and hope that I get the right ones.
Yeah. But all right, I think that's all we're gonna get today. Thank you all, and just share the agenda. See if you have any questions, and of course the usual antitrust notice and the um, IPR policy notice on the top. I'm suggesting, last week, sorry, we started a conversation about, I call it something beyond data management, like in, disclose of private data, but rather on the need of behavior or goals, managing the agents on that front, in addition to at least data. We could continue on that one. The second bullet I put on is a little bit of a deeper study on the Atlas agent or browser-based agent, and there are a few of them, and how that the vulnerability of prompt injection and understanding the risks involved, and potentially we can think about how our solutions may be able to help. So those are the two topics I put on for today's discussion. And before we move on, just open to any questions or modifications to our agenda.
So this is Drummond. I'm walking around the streets of Malmo, Sweden. Here, I'm here for a conference tomorrow from the Advanced AI Society. So I figure I should join the call and get the current on advanced AI before I go to the conference. But I was going to say I was in a meeting yesterday where it was asserted there are 26 AI browsers now available, open source or on the market. I mean, I heard of Atlas. I had no idea there were 26 out there, and the point was made about the malware. I mean, the prompt injection attacks, are just like endemic. And I thought, wow, serious. So I'm glad it's on the agenda. That's all I was going to say.
Great. Okay, so we're trying to get to that, and the two topics are very closely related because a lot of that issue would come into play once we get into the details. So maybe we'll go is to the events. I just highlighted a few of them that's coming soon. For folks interested in the LFDT member summit. They also have two so-called maintainer days, which is for developers. And they are 4 days in a row, but at two different locations, in Brooklyn, one, and the other one in Jersey City. And then Drummond and myself will be giving a presentation to the LFDT. They have like region hubs, I guess. So Seattle has a meetup, and it's kind of an ongoing thing. And so we were going to, for this month, and present something about empowering AI agent protocols with TSP and first-person credentials. So you're familiar with that content, but you are welcome for that meetup. It's going to be on Zoom this time, although they sometimes meet in person. That's it on the events I have listed. And then I think, I don't know, anyone have news or things to share before we jump into the agenda?
I don't think so. I think you just covered it, that we're giving that talk next week. And you know, we do have the Trust OP Symposium coming up on the 19th and 20th. So that's just a
Right.
reminder. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, those yeah, I forgot mentioning that. That's also listed in as the top one in the events list.
Cool. I'm just checking into my room, so I should be able to get on Wi-Fi here in about, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah. So our German my own presentation will be on Monday, so next Monday, at the 10th. And then 19 and 20 is a virtual symposium. The LDT events are in January, late January. All right. If not, I'm okay with mixing the two topics as well. But basically, the first one is about, we've been talking about data and how do we disclose, etc. But imagine, you have an agent, and the easiest one can imagine would it be, for example, the Atlas browser, right? Something like that will be good example to like put on to, and then you think about how this agent is acting. And in the Atlas browser, there's a so-called agent mode, and you have to do it actually, not default there. But in the agent mode, it would try to do what we think of as agent. So if you say, hey, research some flight information for me and book it, it's going to try to do the whole thing. So naturally, it needs ask you lots of questions of that, and we've been thinking about what to disclose to whom, and any way to manage what is being disclosed, right? So that's naturally one area of research, I guess. The other it's about once you disclose where that information go. So in the past, we think of information as a piece of data, and that data in some format. Um, but once you disclose to a long-term entity, instead of simply by some software, when it's just done, then this data can go away or you can delete them. The long-term entity potentially can run um, a real-time or ongoing learning process. So the learning process either is a way of storing or keeping some information, like for example, your contacts in some type of memory, the classic memory. In that case, this memory can be, our later example will show, corrupted, but also this memory can be deleted, and therefore we have one way to manage them as data. However, if you go through a learning process, then this data is injected or incorporated into a LM model itself. And therefore, in that case, at least right now, technically and legally, those are considered different. And the boundary is very vague, and there's no easy way to sort of police like what is being ingested into. And that's another area of data management. So to separate the two, we've been calling it, well, one is suggesting a solution is instead of managing the model, you will be managing behavior, because the way to test the model is probably testing behavior. And the other is sort of a goal management, is essentially say, well, you want the agent to only do certain things. And if you set the goal very strict, potentially that would also another way to manage. So I'm sure there are others, but those are the If I could, my best effort to give a recap or a short summary of what the issues are. Neil.
Yeah, so just spending a little bit of time on this topic, pretty much 24/7, 365 these days. So some observations. One is that if you look at data, you look at a traveler profile, they get some very deep very quickly in terms of all sorts of information, some of which you will disclose and some of which you won't. Some of it is reference material that the person's agent will use to derive certain information from. Case in point is I'm not going to disclose any of my medical history details. If some organizations like a hotel or airline says, can you tell me all the mobility and other support needs you need because of your medical conditions? Your personal agent is going to go through the medical records and look at the context and create, here are my needs. Right. So without disclosing that medical information, your personal agent is going to have the access on a demand basis to generate the requests. And and it may cache that in your your private data store as what are my actual airline aids or supports that I need as part of my profile, which is disclosable. I'd say the other thing is that generally speaking, what happens after the data has been used, it gets dropped. One of the huge problems that the travel industry has, where every site is maintaining your contact information, your personal profiles, and everything else, is that very frequently, unless you are an extremely frequent flyer, that information is stale. So for any organization to hold on to it, the classic case is, the email, they're sending emails off into the ether for something you abandoned 6 months ago, or they've got the wrong phone number. So one of the problems for any travel or people in the travel supply chain is that the best source is to come back to the traveler. So the intent here is it's it's either on your device wallet or a cloud wallet to get that information, and it would only disclose specifically information for immediate need. One of the things to that is envisaged in that workflow is that you hand the requester a token to come back and ask for the same information at later points in time, without having to go through the disclosure thing every potential. So there'd be a cache specification for what to return back when somebody asks. So that's a way of shortcutting it. So if somebody needs your contact information, rather than use what may be stale information, they'll go and refresh the information they need for the particular transaction, as opposed to caching it in any form. So that does a couple of things. One, it reduces the exposure for a service that's holding on to PII. And number two, it gives the service, with today's technology and speed of communication, it gives them instantly the correct information and only what they really need. So then and it's back to what Drummond gave the name to. It's micro sharing. You're only going to share what's absolutely needed on a short-term basis, with the right to come back and ask for that, for the duration of a trip, saying, hey, I need that contact information. Some of the other things we looked at in terms of that is case in point, saying, what's my emergency contacts? So rather than release that, would be to have an interface saying, here are the following emergencies, and of this list, you will send me a specific message, and I will give you a specific contact, or I will relay that message to the contact, and they will contact you, the travel service provider, and respond that way, as opposed to handing out contact information. So there's a couple of models along with medical one, that what you're sharing is in many cases a derivative of the data, and only for a short period of time. That does not limit the amount of information you may choose to share. You may choose to share, now here's my entire profile, but the use case for that is, again, if you share the whole profile and your profile is constantly changing with your travel habits, then that information gets stale quickly. And some queries that have gone out to Chubb and other major insurance vendors, if you carry on with storing huge amounts of PII, you can literally double your cybersecurity insurance in the current climate. So that's the single
So
biggest
Neil,
sensitivity issue.
yeah, can I ask a clarification question? So in this case, the idea is that, for example, no caching, that particular behavior is voluntary. Like you are basically rely on the agent developer to make sure that they are not doing it. Is that the case?
Yeah, it's really, I mean, what we're talking about is a generic pattern is don't share more than you actually need based on the circumstance. Part of that was driven by looking at what the airline industry currently does, in that they have already got, there's 7 stages of travel, including, on an actual in the middle of a trip. They have, very strong suggestions to travel service organizations as to you don't need a passport if all somebody's doing is shopping for a vacation. You need a passport, obviously, by the time about to you know check in for a flight, but they already have here's the list of things that are reasonable for you to ask from a traveler from their profile. This is some long-standing things, and we're just sort of expanding that. So the micro sharing concept is sort of semi legacy. It's basically something they're doing now. There are always people saying, no, I want to have your passport because I want to have your passport. But again, that has increasingly cyber insurance risks for the companies who are asking for the information they don't really need. The other thing is, hey, but we want to do a marketing survey. So we want to look at your personal preferences and whatever else. Well, that's the way to handle that is, rather than hand over all your travel records and everything else, you run what's called a federated query. So I want to do marketing study. So, okay, send me the query to my profile. I'll let it run on that and ship you back the information I want to actually reveal. And that's nothing new in the data analytics industry. That's always been true. Like, case in point, today, you look at industrial supply chains. Each of the suppliers in there does not hand across their entire database to access those. Question as to what's the status of a shipment is a federated query through the chain to each of the nodes in the chain. So that practice is actually fairly pervasive in the non-SSI world. So, did I answer your question?
So I took some note, and I think this is maybe I'm mentally thinking this is a way that we currently have some kind of a best practice in travel industry, and we may be able to do better in that general approach. So there are maybe regulations, maybe economic well-being, that a lot of reasons that both the whole industry would be moving in that direction anyway. So this is one way of thinking that this is a collaborative solution. We assume the agent providers or the service providers, the different parties in the supply chain, the customer, all are interested, have a common interest in doing this. And here are many ways we can do it.
Yeah, and to some extent, one of the things that is still up for the topic is what metadata do you say? In other words, can you say, okay, here's what I have in my profile. I'm not going to give you the data, but I'm going to give you the structure of it so you can know, oh, you've got scuba diving experience, or I've got, I'm a member of the following loyalty programs. And certainly one of the things that you brought up in terms of doing a private LLM on Wenjing Chu by an organization, that's much the same thing as a loyalty program, in that they have private information about you within their program. Well, one solution is that rather than them hang on to that proprietary information about you, is they push it back to your wallet, and they may have exclusive access to what's in your wallet about that information, but it gets it off their system, but make it fully accessible when they need to pull it back. So that's one advantage of a digital wallet, is that if they want to hand back a piece or an LLM or some other model, they don't have to host it on their site. they could hand it back to your cloud wallet or digital wallet for them to get access when they need to.
Is my note accurate? So one beyond micro sharing, which is sort of defining the context to be more and more specific. Second is that you want to move personal data as much as possible from the server side to the client side.
Yeah, and also derivatives. So it's just not the data. It may be a model. So it can be more than just the raw data.
Okay. Just one quick note, then we can continue, Nikki. When we talk about derivative to all models, we are um, uh, we recognize that because it's a collaborative model, right? F methods, um, there is a diversion of interest somewhere, and so the service provider or the model maker have inherent interest to know more.
Mhm.
And therefore, there is a line where it says, well, you may think I'm taking your private information. I may think I'm not. And there's always, one way will be like I will do, for example, I will remove your names, any kind of a legally PI information, but I would be able to still without your name, but I can give you a date even, and build a very good model about you, while avoiding remembering your names.
No, I mean that's fairly standard right now. It's basically a depersonalized query.
Yeah,
So that's something again, you could say, no, I want to do a marketing survey. I'm going to hand you a query. I want you to hand me back the personal information, but depersonalize it so it doesn't identify you, so that it can be used in a
it
market survey.
identifies you. It just it doesn't it purges your legally obligated PI information. So I would have like for instance, right? um, I could build a model of any particular individual in minute details, but deliberately remove the name and maybe anything we consider sensitive, um, and I give a random number as your identifier.
Mhm.
But as long as I pick up any of your public behavior, I can immediately link to that model. And that's what, most of the companies are doing is they naturally have a model for each of the customers. And the recent news says like, I think Delta is the first one that's mentioned in the news. They are literally going into per person algorithms. So they will be able to do, for example, pricing based on individual person.
Mhm.
We may be sharing some information voluntarily, but also even if we don't, I think they will still be able to do that. They don't need your name for it or social security number. No.
Yeah. It's just like I said. I mean, most of this about where, rather than putting in their repository, they access it in real time through, the dynamic access. So it's just they can shape it any way they want. They're just going to leave it with you, and they access it through a federated query as opposed to pulling it back and storing it on a disk. So think of it as remote access, right? So it's the
Yeah.
same structure, and I said, and the thing is here, if they want to lock it down and saying that's our proprietary information, they could put it, encrypt the darn thing on or so that the only actor that can get access to it is the person who put it there or the organization that put it there. So
Yeah.
there's lots of techniques.
Thank you, Nikki.
Oh, hi. I was just listening to the conversation. So I completely agree that you need, yeah, data at the edge, but also compute at the edge. So I think that's an important aspect to consider. But I kind of wanted to go back to your list of things that we should consider in our scope as opposed to data management, goals management. And as you were talking, in my mind, I was thinking about the interplay between the humans and the AI agents and the ability to, for example, assert terms like my terms, um, manage constraints, switch things off, uh, end relationships, and so forth. So I think maybe we should consider um, adding like constraints or consent or relationships management as one of the kind of facets that we look at. Um, I wonder also if we think about you've got data, then you've got kind of prompting and coding and design, then you've got behavior. The goals are included in the prompting, but then you've got outcomes and consequences. And the only way to kind of manage outcomes is with metrics, in my view. So you might have goals, but there's always unintended consequences. And like the harms work that we did in the human experience working group clearly demonstrated what we termed contingent harms, where it's something that doesn't arise from the direct interactions, but arises as a consequence of the actions or interactions or transactions of others. So an example of that is a contingent harm is where on, say, a gambling platform, the incentives are misaligned so that the platform is incentivized to sell more gambling, to keep people on the machines, and to sell advertising, for example, for other games or services. And that's the interactions between the platform and the gaming providers or the advertisers directly harm a gambling addict, for example, because they're exposed to this advertising. It's a contingent harm. So I wonder if, as well as goals and behavior, we should also consider outcome or consequences.
Oh, I see. Okay. So let me see. So I would say if I put all these together, right? So goal is sort of like in the front, behavior is in the middle,
Yeah. And then
and then C
outcomes.
is the outcome, which is the
Yeah.
fact.
Or the impact, if you like.
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. So um
It's 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 quite similar actually in structure to the theory of change model where you have inputs, um, activities, outputs,
yeah,
outcomes, and impacts.
right.
So that's
So
quite an interesting model to look at.
this way
Um,
of thinking, sorry, have you?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So this way of thinking is I want to see if we all agree. I thought this way of thinking is quite different from what Neil described earlier, which is very more of a collaborative way. Um, if we are trying to do sort of a constraint or relationship management, then we are not naturally objecting to disclose personal information because we will be disclosing personal information if we want to close relationships. We're then trying to manage its behavior, not what the model knows, but rather how the model is going to use that information for my benefit versus for some other purpose, right?
Yes, and also what will happen with the information when you're done with, or it's accomplished whatever you initially for it. Meaning,
But
is
it's a
the model or the operator of the model going to take it and go, surveil you with it, or add it into something, just start training other things with it, or doing things that you never intended to happen with it.
But for relationship management, I would, for devil's advocate, well, I want to object that because if you want to have a long-term kind of a trusty relationship, then you would retain that, don't you think? Because
Oh,
otherwise,
no,
what
no.
is a relationship?
No, no, no. What I'm saying is, yeah, but you want to be confident that whoever is the relationship is with, or whoever is helping manage the relationship, is only using it for that purpose, right? And they're not taking and doing other things with it that you never intended.
Yes and no, because the purpose is what we say goal. Now, your tomorrow's purpose may require me to maintain information that I learned today. It's not related to today's goal, but tomorrow's goal, I may need it. And that's what the relationship is about, is that you're going to keep it. And, if we think about personal relationship, you can remember things. And that's what
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean.
I see what you're saying, but okay, so now it comes down to what's your relationship with that relationship provider, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes. I'm
right.
just trying to point out there's no clean, there's some difference here that depending on which way you lean towards, it seems like it's quite different.
Yes. I mean, one way to put it is, if that relationship provider is, say, a certain very large uh, AI company that I don't, you know, I have very little confidence that my data is going to just be used for one thing, which is optimizing my relationships. I have a completely different view of them, of them maintaining that data and holding it for a long period of time than I do of, someone who's in a much higher trusted relationship with me, right?
Mhm.
That's all I was really saying. Nikki says it only matters what you do with the data. Yes, I guess that's right.
Yeah, I'm listening through and I'm assimilating a bit into that exchange I had with Nikki. What I'm seeing as a potential concern is, and I would say by way of background, this is the second of three trusted AI agents discussions I'm having today alone. That's where we're at with the pace of this topic, both from the industry perspective and us as standards and open group folks. There's already discussions looking at how you set up zero trust configurations for AI agents, which is awesome. But as you go through the various identity and access management, policy-based access controls decisions for those, one of the things I have seen as a concern is you set up a means of configuring that to ensure that you, as the AI agent controller, allow the agent to do certain things, but the mechanism for policy-based access controls could be checking in with a policy registry that, kind of like JWTs and the trail of breadcrumbs. I now have an audit log of how this agent verified that it was allowed to do X, Y, and Z, which collectively means I've shared X, Y, and Z about myself inadvertently. There's no perfect answer for that yet architecturally, but it's kind of a good, I guess, juxtaposition between what we're talking about here and how that has to be translated into a technical solution.
Right. And policy, so I want to point out too, in terms of policy control, right, seems to at least two challenges. One is policy or used to be called machine readable policy, is essentially a programming language, and its expressiveness is quite limited, it seems. Also, if you get into really fancy policy, then its execution, because it's often global in scope, its execution is almost impossible. Um, the the other part of policy is um, uh, about the change, because we change our policy all the time, or in our own mind personally, right? You change it all the time. And today you may wish something, and tomorrow you may wish very different things. And we sometimes also contradictory in that terms. And the even if we could exercise full policy control, the ability to follow that, um, I guess, is quite limited. Like we can make a easy policy decision, a simple one, but this may require a service provider to go to the entire database and search for tons of things. I guess you heard about it, like the right to be forgotten is very difficult, right? Even if everybody want to do that, it's very difficult to do because
Yeah,
deletion is
yeah,
entangled everywhere. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. No, you have a really good point about the difficulty of the more complex the policy gets, it just sort of increases exponentially how it's actually being managed, which means we got to come up with simpler ways of developing confidence and trust that your data is going to be handled okay. Nikki just posted something else here. Policy coherence. Oh yeah. Oh good.
Right, policy coherence. Well, because there's whole academic study on policy languages and all that, and it's a very difficult. Most of the actual policies, like cloud providers implement, dumbed down and simplified to be more or less linear. And so they will limit the vocabulary, limit, actions, time, all that sort of things, make it into basically one by one linear execution. Earlier policies use like AI-like things, and those policies are like enormously difficult to execute because its complexity is unbounded.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's a great point when, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I've read a couple of academic papers in the last month about using AI and large language models to support policy coherence from like SDGs down. And a recent one that uses AI for semantic interop around governance for digital twins. I put the link in the chat earlier. So I
Oh,
think it's
good.
worth another discussion about how AI can actually help with that governance interoperability, because technical interoperability, as tricky as it is relatively simple. And I think there are other components in dynamic policy management that you were mentioning, Wenjing, in decentralized ecosystems. And we've kind of touched on it in earlier working groups and task forces. But I think AI brings new opportunities there. So I put the link to one of the papers in the chat, and I'll share the other one on Discord.
Yeah,
Is that
thanks, Nikki.
dive?
I probably because I joined late, I didn't see that link, but I'm fascinated to be able to read about that one for digital.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
I agree. I think there's a possibility that this sets upper bounds for what levels of autonomy you could have in an agent, because to your point, Wenjing, you need increasingly complex dynamic policy allocation with greater levels of autonomy. But conversely, you can't introduce latency because it's got to go back and sort through, 4,000 different things. Okay, then to Nikki's point, we put AI in there to do it. Okay, how is the AI tested to make sure that its interpretations of the policy provide the right governance and that it doesn't hallucinate because there's a shortcoming in the semantic interoperability of the policy that it's been the multiple policies that
Yeah,
it's
there
been.
are ways you can do that though. There are controls, there are data changes, use of RAG, use of small LMs, use of,
I
you
agree
know,
with you that there are ways to control it, but you will still have shortcomings in your statistical variance that ultimately
yeah,
could
you will.
manifest as problems.
And then at that point it goes into your risk management and it
Right,
depends on risk appetites. I
Right.
right.
mean, it's worth maybe reaching out to folks like Thinclusive that you have compliance platforms and they're multi-jurisdictional, multi-context, this RegTech kind of compliance as a service, that kind of implementation, because that's essentially what they're doing. And many of them do employ AI. So I think maybe there's some stuff we can learn there, but in decentralized ecosystems, this is a really key point about how you deliver proper like business interop using in technical terms, pretty straightforward. Every engineer is shouting at me at this stage, but in kind of governance, the terms as opposed to the tech, as Daryl would say, then. And I think there's some great opportunities now with AI and the capabilities that we've got with things like my terms.
So that paper sounds very um, promising because it seems
Yeah.
like this is kind of the problem that is very well suited for AI. So we are talking about another AI to manage the AI, right?
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, we're trying to stop bad stuff happening. Why don't we? And in the whole scope of the working group, Wenjing, you laid out AI for trust and
Yeah,
trustworthy AI. And what we're talking about now is AI for trust in the service of trust.
yeah, yeah.
So, um, but as I say, I've got another paper that I attended the Turing conference, which was all about DPI and resilience versus hyperscalers. And this guy presented this paper um, and research at that event. And I've subsequently been in touch with him. And what he's doing is quite straightforward when you think about it. It's all focused on impacts. Those are the kind of policies that he's tried to flow down from the like supernatural or supranational level.
Mm.
Anyway, I, we haven't talked about the other interesting topic you had, Wenjing.
Let's see, 10 minutes. Drummond, you have a final comment on this, then we move to the next one.
Yeah, very short comment, and maybe it's for a future call, but the idea of, AI that's helping us manage, the trust in our interactions. I think folks know that, or if you don't, Andor Kesselman's working on, his own startup on guardian agents, and the whole job of guardian agent is to do what we were just describing, Nikki, right? Serve as an AI agent that is basically not just enforcing your policies or helping you enforce your policies, but actually advising you about the policies. So I want to just say I agree that's a very rich topic and maybe one for a future call. And I think Andor would probably be
I think he might be happy. I mean, he's co-chairing the other group at Diff, and sharing more about that. I think it's a very promising direction. That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Neil, you want to come in here too?
Yeah, just to add to that discussion, I mean, one of the things you could do is put a middleman AI in there that's a specialist in disclosures for a particular purpose or whatever that could manage, selective disclosure on behalf of a user or client, to mitigate and handle any loads that, the original requesting agent has. There's lots of scope there for something that's really smart and knows exactly, for a particular kind of transaction, what information should be sharing and not, and what kind of disclosures minimize the exposure, but gives everything to the requesting service that they actually need to do a good quality job of meeting your needs. So, I mean, yeah, why not?
Thank you. Okay, so let's cut it here, and we can continue next week. Hopefully, if any of you have references something, feel free to post in the notes or to Discord channel, so we all follow up and move on this topic next week. So the third or the last topic is about better understanding of browser-based agents and their security and vulnerabilities there. I posted one link about a company called Layer X, which I think this is not news, but they figured out a way actually doing it, allowing injection of malicious instructions on ChatGPT. And this basic idea is that when you build an agent in a browser, the browser, unlike a operating system, has a weaker form of isolation. So people could, for example, lure you to visit a quote unquote bad website, and that bad website would be able to then inject or write some information into the memory to be leaked by the browser to other conversations you with, let's say, your travel, airline website, right? So this mechanism is well known and is often used for a lot of attacks today. But in the ChatGPT's case, is that this information is not written to just another web access, but right to the ChatGPT or the agent's quote unquote memory. So in this case, it would be like the context or like a RAG, whatever information, right? So you could essentially write things which becomes instructions, because information and command is essentially the same thing. So they will be able to modify your prompt, and therefore potentially can do anything they want because you have all the valid IDs and authorizations, everything, but the prompt changed. That's my, basically high level reading of this. And there is that paper in the link does go into a little bit of detail, but they don't say every little detail. But potentially, I think by tracing this down, people should be able to produce this problem. And it seems like a very straightforward thing to do anyway. So I guess my personal take on this is that there are security problem to think about. So a digital ID itself would not be sufficient, because ID simply says we would put identifier related information into a stronger wallet, for example. Hopefully that wallet is better protected than the running memory of a browser. But with that, it's not enough, because this will bypass all of that. In fact, you are enabling it in a way by providing very strong identity. Anyway, so that's I thought that's also related to the kind of solutions that actually can work, and maybe point to beyond what we are currently thinking into other areas. So any reactions, comments, and see any other type of work we can take into. I know the W3C seem to be having a working group on similar topics as well, but this is a long-term, well-known problem.
Yeah, I would, just a general comment is the industry still is very much looking at a centralized extract to the core or extract to a specific server and do all your heavy lifting there as opposed to distributed. So, so people are still talking about, well, we'll move it all to the central repository system and do the stuff there as opposed to distributing it. So.
Yeah, this particular problem, let me put the link back again, sharing back again. Um, it's I think even in the distributed system, this will still exist because this is modifying, in a way, modifying the agent's memory. So if I have a way to modify the agent's memory, I guess it doesn't matter whether it's distributed or not, you are vulnerable to it, right? In fact, this thing happens in your own local machine because the browser supposedly run on your local system.
Not quite sure I agree with that. If it's on your machine and you're only going to disclose the information off of the machine, then that's a heck of a lot deeper control than if you ship all that information off to some central server.
I'm not sure where we're talking about the same thing. Yeah.
And when you talk about like ChatGPT memory, right? So that's sitting at ChatGPT. It's not on your machine.
No, the
So
memory as in your context, for example, your prompt and all those things that
yeah, that's going to
yeah.
be on their side. It's not going to be, I mean, you may have it in your local browser, but that's not what they're using because they have to have a copy of it at least. But if you could change their memory, right, then you're basically you definitely you're definitely controlling the outcome of the response because now it's working with that data, right?
Yeah. Well, you're right. There are two copies of it, but if you presumably the server's copy is coming from your browser, right? The browser is the interface you type it in, so if they can change how the server or the LM sees, then you are essentially controlling it, or the malicious party is essentially controlling it.
I'm not sure how they would do that though. So you're saying they're intercepting my prompts to, let's say, ChatGPT in the browser and changing my prompt? Because that will end up in history. But I'm not sending my history every time. ChatGPT uses my history. Like when I add the context to let's say some documents and it looks at my previous uh, prompts and responses, it knows the context of our conversation.
Yeah, that's assuming you have a way to securely communicate with the LM. But if your local memory, your browser's memory is compromised, then whatever you are communicating with the LM are compromised too.
Right, but I would see that in the response immediately back to me. I would see that this is not what I'm talking about.
Maybe um, uh, uh, if you envision an interactive agent, but the agent can do autonomous things for quite a
True.
long time. And
Yes,
so
yeah.
within that time, the
Oh, then
agent can do tons of things.
yeah. So you're
Right?
screwed.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You may eventually, if you are very careful, you may eventually realize the agent's behaving weird. Yes.
Right.
Right. You're right. You may notice sometime, but not always. And and
Right.
besides the
You need an
return, you
agent
can also modify, presumably, right?
right. So you need an agent watching your agent.
Yeah, yeah, because all these studies, the solutions we propose are assuming that your own execution is secure. If
Right.
you cannot have that, then, all bets are off, right?
Right. Then it's the whole thing's
Yeah.
pointless.
Yeah, all the more reason you need a trusted execution environment on your laptop.
Well, even for that, because of
Browser.
that usually the T is only for a small portion of your computation. It cannot take the whole thing as it is designed today. So it's reasonable to say, well, your wallet computation is in a T, but you can't have the entire um, agent execution or app running in the T. That's not feasible today.
Yeah, and but even how that let's say that agent or that LLM is allowed to communicate or exchange with the trusted environment is another challenge.
Correct. Yes. Yes. Anyhow, we run out of time, but I'm glad we have a chance to also discuss this particular problem. And, I think we have at least two areas, new areas that we can explore. And so, what do you guys have a plan for next week? Shall we continue on these two topics or any other things? I'll check with Eric as well.
I'm good with these.
Great.
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I'm good with these as well. I guess my question is, what are the expected outputs or deliverables from these topics we're working on?
Yeah. So I did have something like say, well, how do we, convert that into some action plan? Um, how about we keep that in our mind? Naturally, understand the problem, that's just the first step, but maybe will be able to guide us on the right approach or next, phase of work. And so that's the plan. Maybe next week we should talk about that. Sounds good?
Groovy.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to finish a bit of the more notes here, but feel free to jump in and help edit the notes as well. I keep saying I'm not very good note taker, but thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you,
This is
Wenjing.
my favorite call of the week, by the way.
Thank you, Nikki.
Good.
As far as I'm concerned, we're learning so much from each other. The deliverables will come in time, and I think will be expressed in the agent framework in a lot of ways. But
Yeah.
it's such a bubbly topic, there's new stuff every week. I don't think we should beat ourselves up if we don't know what to do with this new knowledge, and the discussions have real value, certainly to me.
Yep,
Absolutely. And I mean, the next call after
you're
this to
right. You're
jump
helping
to is the trusted agents is Andor's trusted agents working group, and we're working through use cases and very similar thematic parallels in that meeting to what we talked here in this meeting. So it's a good way for us to get kind of coherence.
Yeah, and
Hey,
the
Jim, I don't see that call on the diff calendar. Can you like signal me the link for that thing? Because it's not on the diff calendar. I just looked.
I can. I brought this up to Andor, and apparently it looks like there's a flaw in the diff calendar. The meeting on Wednesday, I think, is bi-weekly, and then there is a recurring Monday meeting on use cases. So
Yeah,
Oh, I
no,
see. It's a use.
yeah. So they actually split it
Thanks.
up into different working groups. So each of those have like a task force slot, and then there's the general one that's once a week.
Right.
So
Oh,
that's
I see.
confusion.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I was just wondering. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a little confusing because I missed a couple meetings until I figured it out.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
it's
cool.
so yeah, the travel stuff. Yeah, we're punching in some pretty ugly use cases into that discussion too.
Good. Nothing better than ugly use cases.
Use case.
All right. Okay.
Bye,
Bye
y'all.
from Sweden.
Guys. Bye.
Bye bye.